stepped out of the room. So she's sitting right there behind Jenny. We will not be handing out copies of the material presented today, but if you'd like a copy of the information, you can see Jenny Bilski after the meeting. And will you stand, Jenny? Thank you. When we get to agenda number 5, it's the call for public comment. At that time, the committee will allow public comment. Those wishing to speak during that time will be given 3 minutes to do so. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01, the board can only take actions on matters listed on the agenda. Action on public comment matters are not listed on the agenda and will be limited, directing staff to study the matter or to schedule the matter for further discussion at a later date. This meeting will end promptly at 3:30 p.m. And so we will go ahead and get started with agenda number 1. And Layla, your presentation.
Should I come up from there? Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Layla Wendell. I'm with the Department of Child Safety, and I'm a project coordinator. I manage a lot of our safety initiatives. So this afternoon, I will be walking you through our agency charts to show some of the trends and also progress that we've made. This slide is our communications and reports to the hotline. What you'll see, we have a lot of information on here. We have the number of communications that come through the hotline each month. We have hotline communications, so those are the communications that are child welfare related, things that are beyond the call for, hey, you know, where's this resource, or can I get some information on case manager? So those would be our hotline communications. And then of those communications, which ones become reports? So what we see in March of 2016, we had 4,186 reports to the hotline. When we look at that in comparison of to last year, March of 2015, that's an 11% decrease in reports coming through. What we've seen is a trend of fewer reports to the hotline. We've had a year-over-year that's lower each month, beginning September of 2015 through March of 2016. And we don't have the final April numbers, but April numbers are also trending to be lower, around the 4,500 level in comparison to April of last year, which was just over 5,000 reports. So, you know, this is the front of our system, and so seeing reports to our child abuse hotline stabilizing and also decreasing is you know, really something that we're looking at very closely. The second slide is criminal conduct reports. So it's of reports that are taken at the hotline, how many are also alleged criminal conduct.
Welcome to CenturyLink conferencing. Please,
What we see is in March, we had about 17% of reports assigned as criminal conduct.
please hold while I confirm your passcode.
In February, we had about 20%. We had implemented our new hotline tool, and there were some areas that needed some additional clarification and guidance around, and so we were able to make those revisions, roll out some additional assistance and training in that area, and we see in March we're back to around the 17% level, which is more on trend than as expected. The next slide shows completed reports versus assigned new reports. What we've done as an initiative to really work on the backlog is to manage the total number of complete reports and understanding that. What we see is in the last, as part of the last 14 months, we've had decreases, meaning more closed reports than reports received in 12 of those 14 months. So what we show there is really we're addressing our backlog, we're addressing the number of total reports open in the agency. So the line chart shows that. The red line are the closed reports, and the blue line are the new reports. So red line above the blue is really showing the progress that our agency is making. Currently, we have 21,380 open reports. It's a huge success. We've made a huge improvement there. Our peak of open reports was in April of 2015. We had 33,245 reports, so this is a 36% decrease from that peak. Our goal here as an agency is to have around 12,500 open reports at any given time. That's reflective of approximately 90 days of investigations workload. So that allows just the regular process of the investigations. So around 12,500 is what our goal is and what we would expect to be caught up. And we're 57% of the way there, so we're really chugging along. The next slide is the number of inactive cases. So inactive cases are any cases without a case note in child's or activity in our child system in the last 60 days. We had a peak in our inactive cases back in February of 2015, and I'd like to say that our agency, as of last week, have under 10,000 inactive cases right now. That's a 40% reduction from that peak in February 2015. We have, so as of 5/3/16, we have 9,868 reports. So we're definitely getting out there in the field and congratulating them with their hard efforts and their work, and really touting this as a measure of the success and hard work that they've put in. The next slide is re-reports of maltreatment within 12 months. This is a measure that we really look at when we're assessing outcomes. So what this report shows is of the number of children reported in this time frame, how many children received a re-report within 12 months. And what we see from July 2014 to September 2014, so that would have been the first time frame where we had the initial report, 29% of children have a re-report. And so when we're looking at efforts as far as the best fit for services and addressing family needs when they come into the DCS system, we're really looking at this as, can we improve upon this? And yes, we know that we can, and this is one of the measures that we look at as far as the outcomes. The next slide is our service referral wait list. Back in July 2015, we had over 1,000 services with a wait list. That's our parent aid services, our supervised visit, and in-home services. As of April of 2016, we have just under 300, 291 on a wait list. It's a 74% reduction since that peak. Where we see the wait list specifically is more in our in-home side of services. We've done a really good job being able to decrease the supervised visit wait list, which has really allowed a lot of our field offices to use case aids in different ways to really support field work and other functions within the office. The next slide are entries and exits. So on the far right, we have the time frame of January 2016 through March 2016. We see there that our total child entries were 3,200 kids, and exits 2,755. Total number of kids in out-of-home care as a preliminary number at the end of March 2016 is 9,094 children. So what we see here is just the comparison of capacity, and our goal is to, first of all, be able to have a system that can equalize that of the number of children coming in. Can we exit that same number? But really the goal is, can we exit more than come in? And there's various strategies around that as far as supports to put in place so that children never come into care, and then initiatives that we work on to exit children, timely permanency for children. The next slide details the 19,094 children in care. So on the far right bar, you have the preliminary March 2016 number. February 2016, our final number was 19,044. What we see between that first preliminary number that we report and the second one tends to go down by about 150 kids. And that's really due to the timing of entering information into our child system. So we do anticipate the March 2016 final number to be under 19,000. What this chart also shows is of the children in out-of-home care, where they're placed. In March, we see that 41% of children are placed in an unlicensed setting, and that's primarily kinship placement. We have 37% of children in licensed foster care, 14% of our kids are in congregate care, 3% independent living, and 5%, which is another category. It's runaways and areas where we haven't entered that placement in our child system. The next slide shows our length of stay. This one is length of stay for children who are in care 60 days or less. This is a metric we look at to look at short stays. So are there areas where we can improve where kids are coming into care for just short amount of time? The data on this slide is a time period beginning July 2015 through the end of March 2016. And what we see is about 7% of our children exit within the first 3 days. And then it kind of builds from there. When you look at the number of kids that exit within 7 days, it's about 12%. And then we look at kids exiting in 30 days, and that's at about 15%. What we really focus in on here are children who exit 7 days or less. So are there areas where we could put other supports or services in place to help never bring that child into care? If it's okay to return them after 3 days, what can we do to never have them in our system in the first place? The next slide is just another way to show of the total number of children in out-of-home care, the number that are in the congregate care placement and number in licensed foster care placement. And so we have, as I mentioned before, about 37% of our children in a licensed foster care setting and 14% in a congregate care setting. The next slide shows field staff, so it's our staffing level at DCS. And as of March 2016, we have 42 assistant program managers, so that's the assistant program manager oversees a section. We have 216 unit supervisors, 74 child safety specialists at the hotline, 923 specialists who are case carrying, and 273 specialists who are in training status. So, you know, what that shows us is, especially at the assistant program manager level and at the supervisor level, that's an area where we're really focused in on, and we've stabilized a lot. We know that supervision and really strong supervision is a key component in retaining staff. And then the next slide, which is our last slide, just shows the staffing picture of the agency as a whole. So as a whole, there are 2,700 staff at DCS, and it's broken down there with the field staff and then all other positions, which are administrative and support staff. We have about 1,170 workers in other positions and about 1,000 in the field. That is the end of the slideshow. Are there any questions?
So the slide that showed leaving under 30 days, so the 3 days and then the 7 days, I just was curious, targeting those kids that leave under 7 days, do you have data that shows, or do you guys document why they are exiting foster care?
I'm certain that the exit reason is reunification for almost all of them. So we have done some research in the past around reasons why they come into care. And sometimes, right, sometimes there's a legitimate reason that they needed to be removed and we wouldn't be able to, they don't have a home, we have to find the other parent, that kind of thing. But there's certainly other circumstances where probably some faster services and some, maybe a considered removal TDM, we can find options to keep that child safe at home and prevent that removal.
Thanks. I kind of
question about the slide with the inactive cases. You said that was a note that hadn't been entered in how many days or how?
60, more than 60 days.
Is there a requirement by the department of how often they should be updating those?
Well, the expectation is to be able to enter notes is almost in real time. So we do have laptops in various offices, and you know, the hope there was to promote some more timely entering of information. Certainly, we actually have a transfer process flow from investigations to ongoing, and we have put in place tools to help at least gather the information, knowing that it hasn't gone into our system timely. We have what we call a CSRA documentation and field guide. In addition to that, though, we're looking at strengthening that to say, okay, when you go out on that initial investigation, have the notes in within 24 hours or 2 business days. So it should be more timely.
So right now it's at about 10,000 or between 9 and 10,000 inactive case notes. So are those the cases that are the inactive cases, or the cases that haven't been touched yet, or are these open cases, live cases, where they're actually ongoing cases?
They're open cases and they're in inactive status. So when we look at the chart before this, the 21,380 is the total number of open reports, and the portion of that that's the 9,900 is the inactives of those open reports.
She's asking investigations versus ongoing.
So these are like ongoing cases, or?
Very few are ongoing. They're more on the investigation front.
Okay.
Sorry.
Some may be ongoing, but most are investigations.
And those ones we do a routine job of pulling, because in that case, the requirement of ongoing child is in care, that we are visiting on a monthly basis. So, I mean, there really should be. Definitely, yes.
I have a question about the service referral wait list and these 291. How long do they wait on the wait list?
So I don't have a specific answer for you on that right now. We receive weekly information from capacity from our service providers, and for supervised visits, it's not a wait list at all. We see a little bit, and that's timing on getting packets and matching a provider in our system. And for parent aid, again, a lot of that has to do with the readiness of the packet and being able to then send a complete packet to a provider agency. It's really on the in-home side where there's more of a delay in reunification teams in particular. And I think there are various reasons for that. It's a service that wasn't as widely understood in the field, and as we've done more education around that, we're using it more. And so I don't know how long they're waiting on that. I could definitely get an answer back to you though.
Yeah. So this 201 is primarily reunification, not on the prevention, not on the in-home dependency side of the world, but on the reunification side of the.
Yes, as I recall, more than half of them are, but I can give you the breakdown of that 201 of exactly which service they're waiting for. Any other questions?
I don't think the public can ask questions at this time. The public can, only the advisory committee can ask questions at this time.
Are you going to open it up to the public?
For comments at the end, but there can be no action taken on it.
All right, I have a comment at the end then.
Thank you.
For the next part, we don't have a slideshow, but you have the information in your packets.
Can you speak up just a little bit? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Good afternoon, I'm Kris. I work in the policy and rules section of the department. So what I handed out today was just an overall project scope. As you probably know, there are still some rules in the Department of Economic Security, Title VI in the Administrative Code, and those are for the child welfare agencies. And so we received permission from the governor's office to begin regular rulemaking on those. And so there's just a number of areas that we wanted to consider with this opportunity. The rules are, the last time they were touched was like around 2007, but that was only for some of the areas. So a lot of the language is very antiquated, a lot of citations are out of date, and a lot of them are inconsistent with best practice. So the solutions the project proposes is to engage stakeholders to make these rules current and effective, not only in protecting children in care, but also enabling the department to take any adverse licensing action if any agency isn't taking care of the children correctly. So for public value, I kind of split them up into three areas. For the protected public, new rules will provide clear, concise, and understandable standards to child welfare agencies, explain the licensing process and requirements for child welfare agencies, identify the department's responsibility and authority to protect children, and then reflect updated laws. The regulated public will now clearly understand more of what we're facing as far as licensing these entities, and not only for licensing information, but also of how to correctly care for children. It's a real balance. It's not all about regulations. And then, our hope is that we can get lots of participation from everyone. Last time, things were a little bit rushed, and so now we're going to go through some listening sessions in the second half of this year, which is starting already. And then we're hoping to have like a more formal draft out like in December, and then do the notice of proposed rulemaking with the Secretary of State's office. But in the meantime, our goal is to have various drafts that, will go through the stakeholders so that we're not going back and forth so much on it. And it's going to be challenging because not everybody's going to agree on what's appropriate, but we'll certainly do our best. Any questions?
Yeah, I have no idea what I just heard. So
I'm sorry.
That's fine. It's not.
Oh,
So you said 2007, but the rules are these different rules? than
yes,
the
I
ones that
apologize.
just
I
changed?
apologize. These are the rules that weren't finished during the exempt rulemaking period last year,
Okay.
and they cover child welfare agencies. They're pretty lengthy. So the 2000s, I'm sorry.
So it's not the rules that cover foster families, or it is?
No.
No. Okay. So this is, who would be covered in here? I see group homes.
Yeah, group homes, congregate, the Flula said congregate care, and then entities called child placing agencies. Right now, the department primarily places children, or only places children, but in the past, there's been entities that have used those rules to do that same function.
And are there still entities that would use these rules, or no?
Well, the rules are still active until we create new ones, and so when we split off from the Department of Economic Security, those regulations are still under their title in the Arizona Administrative Code, so then we'll bring them over to new Title 21, which is where child safety rules reside.
But what I'm hearing is there are no agencies besides the department.
Oh, for child placing?
Yes.
Yes, no, currently there isn't. That deal with our children, that are in care.
Okay, so are you going to make rules and then have some agencies, or not make rules?
Well, actually, we were just talking to some entities this morning, and there is a lot of confusion, and that's why we need new rules for child placement agencies, for sure.
Excuse me. Could you maybe define what you consider to be a child safety agency?
Child placing.
Child placing or child safety?
Child placing.
Oh, child placing, okay, that's fine. I just had never heard the other concept, so I was struggling with it, thank you.
I'm sorry.
So to clarify, there are currently no child placing agencies that are placing children.
We talked to one
That are covered by these rules.
Christian Family Care places children, but they don't place children in our care. It's voluntary and they don't have reports out on them or anything like that. So they're considered a child placing agency. And also in the current child placing agency rules, there's some discussion of what, I know it's very confusing, but what foster care licensing agencies do. They now have their own rules. So what our task is to define child placing agencies properly and put them in the rules. But the majority of the rules will be for child welfare agencies, which is the congregate care.
Your timing on this, what's the
The time frame for an official draft to go out in the Arizona Administrative Register would be December. That's being very conservative. And then we would like to have new rules by next June or July. It's a very lengthy process when it's not its own rulemaking. It needs to go through the Governor's Regulatory Review Council, and the public has a chance to go to public hearings and comment, and we'll have online commenting as well.
So today, you're sharing with us that this process is being initiated and will go on until completed.
That's correct.
So there's no details of what you're thinking about doing, you're just kicking off this rulemaking change.
Yes, we're starting listening sessions with the stakeholders and taking the current draft and going through it and seeing what we're missing or what needs to be deleted, etc.
How would somebody get involved in a listening session?
I'm more than welcome to contact you. Yeah. Yeah. We put out a docket last Friday in the Arizona Administrative Register. There's a link on our website, and it talks about our strategy, and then it also gives the link to the department's rules website, where we'll be posting current information about listening sessions. Thank you. I'm sorry if it's confusing.
That's okay.
Hi. So I'm Catherine Guffey. I'm the Chief Quality Improvement Officer for the Department of Child Safety. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Child and Family Services Review, and in particular, our program improvement plan for the department that is one of the phases of that process. Just by way of introduction, the Child and Family Services Review is the federal review of child welfare systems across the country. So every state is required to participate in the CFSR, as it's known, in order to in order for us to receive federal funding, we need to participate in this. The goal of the CFSR is to help states improve child welfare services, to achieve safety, permanency, and well-being outcomes for families and children. So it's very focused on the experience of families and children, what is the quality of services they receive, and what is the outcome for them. The purposes are to ensure conformity with federal child welfare requirements, to determine, as I said, what is actually happening with children and families, and then to assist states to improve their capacity to help children and families achieve positive outcomes. And one of the things that is different about the CFSR compared to some other audits is that there's engagement with families and with our stakeholders through this process. So we review cases and actually interview family members. There were stakeholder interviews that were held. And one of the other things that's nice is that the federal government provides us technical assistance as well. So it really is a partnership between states and the federal government to try to have the best child welfare system that we can. So there are some principles that set the tone for not just the review, but I think also for child welfare agencies in general. Partnership is an important principle with the CFSR. both collaboration with families, that recognition that they are experts on what is best for them, and that we need to partner with them in improving services for them. Partnership with our stakeholders, the people that we contract with, our foster parents, tribes, medical professionals, educational professionals, people like yourselves, that we need to work with you to have the best system. Collaboration with the federal government, focus on outcomes and systems, not just the details of processes. You know, federal regulation includes a lot of requirements of, you know, you have to do this certain thing by this certain time, and that's not really what they're interested in as much as what is the outcome. They also promote certain practice principles that, again, I think are important in setting a tone of what they expect a child welfare system to look like. That those systems are family-centered and community-based, that we individualize services to the unique needs of families, that we don't just provide the same services to every family, that we talk with them, we learn about them, and find out what's going to work best for them. Strengthening parents' capacity to protect and provide for their children, that we want for families to be able to take care of their own children, not to have them in foster care. There's a focus on continuous improvement, and in fact, the CFSR is designed as a continuous quality improvement system where every state is expected to have a program improvement plan. The standards are set very high with the expectation that this is important work, and it has very important consequences to people, and until you're perfect, you should continue to improve. And there's an aspect of accountability as well here, that states are required to have a program improvement plan. Like I said, there are potential financial penalties associated with failing to achieve some incremental improvement, and some data requirements as well. So I just want to give you an overview of some, so you can get a sense of what is evaluated during the CFSR. You've probably all heard safety, permanency, and well-being. We get those terms from the CFSR. So there are two safety outcomes that you can see on the slide, that children are first and foremost protected from abuse and neglect, and that they're safely maintained in their homes whenever that's possible, that we try to prevent removal from parents. Some areas they look at are timeliness of initial response to reports, services to protect the children in home and prevent removal or reentry, risk assessment, safety assessment, and safety management. Permanency outcomes look at two aspects of permanency. One is the timeliness in which we achieve permanency and whether children have stability in their living arrangements. We don't want children to be moving from one caregiver to another. We'd like them to stay with one person their whole time in care if they need to be in care. And also maintaining continuity of family relationships and connections for children. So we look at things like how successful are we at achieving reunification within 12 months or less from a child coming into care? How often do we achieve adoption within 24 months or less of coming into care? Are children placed with their siblings? Are they placed with their relatives? Are they having the right amount of parent visitation with their parents and siblings that they need? How well are we preserving their connections to their culture, to their tribe if they're American Indian, to extended family, to their peers, to the things that are familiar to them, things that are important to them in their lives, whether that might be a club that they belong to or a sport that they enjoy. How normal are we allowing their lives to be and maintaining that connection to what's important to them? And also their relationship with their parents, not just through visitation, but promoting having parents attend medical appointments and school meetings and holiday events and birthday parties and all the things that parents and children normally do together, so that they can maintain that relationship even if they're not able to take care of them every day. And then there are 3 well-being outcomes. Here the federal government has thought of well-being as our general assessment of a child's needs. So looking at educational and physical health and mental health, but also looking at, like I said, their needs for normalcy, their social development, those type of activities and needs that children have to develop into healthy adults. caseworker visits with children and parents? Are those occurring at the right frequency, and is there a good discussion happening during those? Are they being held in an environment that builds a relationship with the caseworker so that we can really help these families and have a relationship with them? And then child and family involvement in case planning is also an important concept of making sure that youth and parents are involved in making the decisions that affect them. So that gives you an idea of the scope of what is evaluated during the CFSR. Like I said, we started this process almost a year ago in creating a self-evaluation report, looking at some of our administrative data, and then we went into a phase of reviewing cases with some oversight from the federal government, and most recently we've been negotiating our program improvement plan. So the themes that emerged from this were really not a surprise to us. I don't think they'll be a surprise to you. Our PIP is designed around these 4 themes. Child safety assessment and intervention is the first one. Family engagement is the second. Quality needs assessment and timely permanency. And what you see on this slide is those 4 themes and then also 10 measures. The measures are still a little bit under negotiation, but I think these get to the gist of what we'll be measuring. We'll be looking at the timeliness of our response to reports, and also how quickly do we actually have face-to-face contact with children during those investigations. The quality of our initial and ongoing safety and risk assessments. The sufficiency of safety intervention. The child and family involvement in case planning, our caseworker contacts with parents and children, the quality of our needs assessments, the appropriateness of services provided to meet those needs, the rate of permanency within 12 months of entry, and then the re-entry rate within 12 months of an exit to reunification and guardianship. So our PIP is designed around these 4 themes with some of these will be measured through a case review process, some of them will be measured through administrative data. There will be specific target goals identified for each of these measures. And in order to avoid a financial penalty, we have to not only complete all the activities that we agree to in our PIP, but we also need to meet the goals for each of those measures. So I want to talk a little bit about each of these themes and what is in our PIP. And so the process of developing the PIP requires that we meet with stakeholders. We've had some meetings, we've had discussions about what's important to people, what they think will lead to some improvement. We develop that and then have a series of conversations with the federal government. Right now we're at a phase where they've said, we just had a meeting last week and felt like we weren't going to get any more comments back or suggestions to change, so that was good. We've been working on this for a while, and our PIP is now ready to move on through their process at the Children's Bureau for approval. But we'll go ahead and start working on these things now. And in fact, I think I know that most of these are things that we've already started. Now, so you are an advisory group, and we'd like your advice. And so one of the things that I would ask is that as I'm talking about this, if you could think, do you think these are the right activities? We're at a point where we probably aren't going to be able to change what's in the PIP that much now, but there is some opportunity for you to do other things outside of the PIP. So we really want to know, do you think these activities are going to improve in the areas that we're talking about? And if not, even if yes, what can we do outside of that PIP to support this work? And to go even further than we might just through these activities. Keep in mind that it's always a little bit of a balancing act. There's a risk of a financial penalty, so you don't want to put everything that you could possibly think of in your PIP because you need to complete it all and you don't know what's going to happen over the next 2 years. So you set out some things that are ambitious but you feel are doable, but that doesn't mean we can't do other things outside of what's written in this document. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your input about that. So I think, just to set some context around this as I go through the specific strategies, I think that, as a starting point, we recognize that we need to reduce caseload size. That there's really so much of what we do is about spending time with families, and with foster families, and with children, and we need time to be able to do that. So all of this work is started with, first of all, the work that Leela had talked about of reducing the investigation caseload so that people have more time to do thorough investigations and assessments with families and really hear from them what's going on with their family and how we might help them. And I think we've made some good progress. We've heard the statistics about the story behind that, as well as that there are offices that can manage their workload now. So we're seeing that start to occur, which is nice because then we can start moving into some of what the quality of that work looks like. But caseloads are also still very high and ongoing, especially in Maricopa County. So you'll hear about some things that we're going to do that we've started to address that as well. That's important to keep that in mind with all of this. I don't think we'll be successful if we can't deal with the caseload size. And the other thing that would be important for you to know is that we've thought about, in order for people to practice well, you have to define how to practice. You have to tell them what it looks like. We can't just expect that people are going to know what to do. We need to define that for them. So a lot of what's in here is what we've been referring to as practice guidelines. And it doesn't sound like much. It sounds like, oh, you're just going to write this thing. Well, if you focus on policy and procedure in your training and in the materials you give people, but you don't move to that next level of what the practice should look like. How do you talk to people? How do you, it's one thing to say to a worker, you have to go and respond to this report within 48 hours, but they need to know what to say when somebody opens the door. So we have some of that. I don't want to give the impression that we don't train our staff on that, but I think that there's more that we can do to define what as an agency do we believe that practice should look like, and then design our training around that as well. So that's a theme that you'll see through here. And then the other part is that we know that even when you define what that practice looks like, it's difficult to get a large group of people to practice that way. So, we can write things, but how do we get that behavior to change? One of the things that we know works is coaching, but coaching is a big investment of resources, and with a very inexperienced staff because of turnover, there's some issues around coaching. What we decided to do is to develop, rather than trying to provide superficial training to everybody that we know doesn't really work, to provide some more intensive training and coaching opportunities to a smaller group of people so that we have a cadre of real experts around safety assessment and family engagement, and that those people would then start to form a group that can do more of that coaching. And we need to be creative about what that looks like. We can provide coaching by just modeling that behavior through TDM. So TDM facilitators would be part of this cadre. Our practice improvement specialists who give feedback to caseworkers after reviewing their cases would also be some of these experts. And one of the things we're very fortunate for, I mentioned that the Children's Bureau provides technical assistance to us. So we have been working with them around some technical assistance around the safety assessment aspect. And we also are already starting to receive technical assistance from Bob Friend, who is a national expert on family engagement. So we've got some resources, some really knowledgeable people coming to us that can help us build this capacity internally, and then we can think about ways to provide coaching, even if it means not necessarily going out in the field with somebody, but being somebody they can call when they say I'm having difficulty in this case, I'd like to talk it through with somebody. So I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of the context around this before I talk about some of the specifics. So in child safety assessment and intervention, as I mentioned, step one here is to reduce the caseload, so we've talked about that. The second is that we need to identify a specific time frame for completing face-to-face contact with children who are the subject of a report. We do have time frames around this, But we say you need to respond within a certain amount of time and that you need to see the children, but it doesn't specifically say the children should be seen within this number of hours. So that's something that we want to fix and make it clear when the children actually need to be seen, that your initial response, for example, may not be that you try to see the children, but that you're expected to make concerted efforts to see the children within that time frame. So that's one thing that we'll be doing. We want to update practice guidelines and all kinds of materials related to our safety and risk assessment models. So there's been a lot of discussion about safety and risk assessment models over the last couple of years. We think that we have a good one, we just need to work on it. So we're actually going to, I think, be able to get technical assistance from Action for Child Protection, who are the people that developed this model, so that we can kind of just, polish it up and make sure that our tools and training are up to date, and introduce some more of the knowledge around things like, when can you serve a family in home? How do you make that assessment so that the assessment of whether a child is unsafe is really separate from the question of whether you can serve that child in home, so that we can get away from that thinking of, if there's a safety threat, we have to remove a child. It really should be, if there's a safety threat, how can we serve this family in home, and what would be the circumstances that would prevent us from doing that, sort of flipping that thought around. And then improved and expanded kinship search and foster family recruitment. And this is identified under the safety area because there was a concern about children staying in offices, which we certainly share. So our feeling is that if we improve our kinship search, and one of the things that Bob Friend is helping us do is to increase our family finding capacity, which is a particular technique that was developed of finding relatives for children that, maybe it hasn't been that easy to find relatives. So there's a project through our Auditorium waiver demonstration project, as a matter of fact, that is developing family finding, but also working on recruitment of foster families and retention, so that we've got more family settings for children to go to. The FORI waiver demonstration is targeting children who are currently in congregate care, so that they would no longer be there, and then we would have those shelter placements available if we still need them, so that children don't need to be in offices. So that was seen as a safety issue, that those aren't the best places for children to be. We want them to be with family instead. The family engagement area is extremely important. This is really how we need to do practice, from that first knock on the door all the way through permanency, and really even starting at the hotline. So we're going to be developing practice guidelines around that to help people know what are those skills and techniques you need to engage with families throughout a child welfare case. We're going to look at topics like family engagement during investigation, involving incarcerated parents in the case, conducting quality contacts with parents, parent-child visitation or parenting time, preserving the child's connections, and maintaining the relationship of the child in care with his or her parents. So those are just the ones that we've identified in the PIP. We've been working on some others as well around things like domestic violence, how to work with families with that issue, how to practice with American Indian families. So there's so many of them that we could do. So, and they do take time, and we want to do them in partnership with people. We want to get people's input into what that practice should look like, so that we all have a shared understanding of that, so that a worker doesn't practice in a certain way and then have the courts, for example, question whether that was the right way to practice. We'd all like to start out on the same page of what that should look like. The second step here is training on family engagement techniques. So just incorporating these practice guidelines into our initial training, into advanced training, supervisor training. Again, I think that it's the tendency of most child welfare agencies to focus their training around policy and procedure rather than some of the skills. So we'd like to look at different ways of building in the practice work into training. Do you want us to
to ask questions now? Or
Sure, yeah.
This is not so much a question as, you know, it's the thing that I hear when I'm out there the most, and it probably falls under that family engagement piece, where parents try to reach their DCS specialist and they never call me back. If I've heard that one time, I've heard it a million times. Now, I know there's a new special line for foster parents to call into, and you might want to advertise that a little today, because that's a good thing. Are there anything, I know this is a wonderful plan and we're very supportive, but is there something as simple as a way for DCS people to call back the parent? Answer the question, you know, and sometimes it's just that simple.
You're so right. Like, that is probably the most common concern that I hear is I just need to get a hold of my caseworker. And so yes, there are some things that we're working on. I'm not going to promise you that it'll be fixed tomorrow, because I think number one is get caseload size down. But I think the other thing is, you've heard me talk about our model office sites before, where we want to get the caseloads down in these sites and then really think about those details about every aspect of the work, from what does the reception area look like, what do the visitation rooms look like, and I think one of the important aspects of the elements of a good office is how do you handle communication? Because we know that our case managers spend a lot of time away from their desks. They're not there to answer the phone. And they may be gone all day and the next day and the next day out at court and making home visits. So I think, knowing that, we can think about how do we respond, how do we have other people check their messages, and what can we have other people do to reach out and answer those questions. The other thing that we've been doing is trying to improve our website. We've heard a lot of comments that it could be better. And so we've been working on putting more information there that would be helpful to foster parents and relatives and youth and parents, and then making sure that we're trying to get on our phone messages to each office the website address. So if you're calling and you're not getting a hold of your case manager, or you're getting put on hold, you can at least hear, oh, there's a website, and then I can go to the website and find information for me. And that may actually reduce a lot of the stress of people who may just have a general question about how things work, or, how do I get, I need a phone number to the behavioral health system, or whatever it might be. So that, we're hoping, will take care of some of it as well. But
it's kind of this, you don't have, your case loads are too high, so you can't call them back, but you don't call them back, so you keep high case loads because you can't solve the problem, because, So I think it just feeds on itself, and if you solve that simple thing, you might be able to close out some of these cases.
Right, you're right. And you'll hear me talk in a minute about some work we're doing around trying to reduce the ongoing caseloads, because you're absolutely right, and I think that what happens is that it is exactly what you're saying, and caseworkers need help. They need some help to get these cases resolved so that they have a smaller caseload, and then we can start saying, look, this is a good way to practice, and we're going to monitor and make sure that we have clear practice standards and that they're followed. And communication is extremely important.
So if you have the equivalent of the foster mom for the parents, even process, I hear the same thing from process.
Yeah. And I think part of it is us understanding what are the common things that they need, and do they need to actually talk to their caseworker, or is there somebody else in the office who could serve those needs? Is there information we can put out on the website? We worked on a handbook. The administrative office of the courts has a handbook for parents, and we had a separate one, so we worked with them to combine them. So that's just about finished, and we'll be able to put that out on the website. So those kind of things will hopefully answer some of their questions and reduce some of that frustration.
I don't know if it's a question or a comment, or if you can answer it or whatever. So, kind of on the topic of retaining foster families and seeking out kinship caregivers and that issue. So, I'm sure there's a new life safety inspection checklist. So foster families are required, it used to be every 3 years, and now it's every 2 years, to have a life safety inspection at your home. And I'm a foster mom. If you come in as often as you want to check my whatever, smoke detectors and all that. But this life safety inspection, so I guess, so to back up, so I see all the effort that will be spent to find kinship caregivers and recruit kinship caregivers. And in the middle of April, the failure rate for the life safety inspection was 97%. Because, as you know, there's a very specific list of a 3-inch bandage, a 2-inch bandage, a ACE bandage, a thermal, I mean, just like a, you know, it's just a, there's that, and there's just some other things that if we're in an environment where there's 5,000 kids in foster care and 8,000 families, you go, oh yeah, you better have this list. But in an environment where there are 19,000 kids in foster care and you spend all this time and effort, and it's a goal for the department to recruit more kinship caregivers, it seems at odds with a life safety inspection that you can't pass. So I just wonder if there's any, so if OLR is on the same page and has the same goals, and if that informs their decision about the requirements for licensed foster families and being able to license kinship caregivers.
Right, well, I really appreciate the question and you know, your concern about it, because you're right, that's an area that we need to work on, and we are working on it. So I know, you know, some of the failure rate was that we hadn't communicated well what we were going to be looking for when we came out, so it's helpful to have a checklist, but it sounds like maybe we need to look at what's on the checklist as well. I know that there are, you know, there are laws and rules related to these things, so some of them we don't have flexibility around, and others we may. I know that the office that Leela is working in right now has been working a lot with OLR and trying to define best practice of what those inspections need to look like, so that they're reasonable and people can pass them and get people licensed. So
yeah, I just didn't want to have this conversation without sort of elevating, for me, that's the elephant in the room, is that the process for licensing is contrary to your goal. So
yeah, and I heard that loud and clear. So
okay.
Yeah. We're definitely working on that, because you're right, it's a barrier, and we need foster parents, so.
Yeah. With or without an ACE bandage.
Right.
You could partner with a nonprofit that if you need ACE bandage to a certain size, you just partner and they know that they just pay phone call this, they have to deliver your bandage, so you always, you know, whatever it is.
Right.
If you knew in advance, you could partner with nonprofits and be happy to provide that.
Sure. You know, like we could give you that number and say, can you come over now so I can check this box off, you know? Yeah. All right. Any other questions before I go on?
I just was going to say, Catherine, that there was a time when the department actually worked at reducing the requirements for foster parents in order that they could find foster parents in rural areas and in areas where there was no way the families could meet those requirements, and yet the children were coming out of those very areas. And so I think I'm all about protection and being sure that families are qualified, but since I started fostering about 50 years ago, things have changed, and yet I don't think families have changed that much. And I think that we need to be more realistic in both what we're looking for in families, and I think there needs to be some specific training for your staff around how to deal with foster families. To understand what motivates a foster family, what brings them into that decision in the first place, and then how they would like to be treated. I think that's a very critical thing in terms of retaining foster parents and having good working relationships with your staff.
So that family engagement practice is not just about parents, it's also about how do we engage with everybody, certainly including foster parents and relatives. So appreciate the comment. I'll keep going. But yes, jump in when you have questions. So we talked about training, and I talked about developing a cadre of employees who are highly knowledgeable about family engagement techniques. So part of what we've been, as I said, we have the Title 40 waiver demonstration project, which will have family engagement specialists. That's their title, and they will have coaching through Bob Friend. They've started some of their training and have coaching through that process. And we also have a new permanency planning unit, and they've been involved in some of that training as well. And then we'll have a second cohort of training. And we've also been talking about things like, can we go out in offices that have been successful in reducing their caseloads and talk to them, and, hopefully they would see it as a reward for us to come out and say, we want to give you some more, we want to give you this opportunity and learning these expertise and helping you feel really, really confident in how you do your job and successful, and, asking them, what would that look like for you? Here's what we have. What would you like it to look like? And building those skills within some of those offices. So Casey Family Programs has been extremely supportive in this regard and really willing to work with us. So I'm feeling optimistic about that. Another thing that we're working on is TDM meetings. So over the years, there's been some drift around from the original model of team decision-making, and we found that we're not always holding team decision-making meetings when we should, and that we're not holding them prior to removal as often as we could. So we think that, some work, we've already done some work around what the procedures are and having some ways to oversee that, to monitor fidelity to the model, so that we can make sure that TDM meetings are being held, that we've got well-trained TDM facilitators, and then looking at how do we work with families so that we can kind of hold what's happening for a couple of days, make sure that we feel that child will be safe for a couple of days while we then get family members together and talk about what does this child need? What are we going to do together to make sure that this child is okay so that we don't need to remove the child from the home? And we think that that will be a much better experience for families and reduce the number of children coming into care as well. Any more questions on the family engagement piece? Quality needs assessment is kind of a broad category. This is looking at more of the, beyond the safety assessment, what are the service needs of the family, what are the treatment needs. We want to look at, we've been doing some work around the wait list and providing people information about when should a family be receiving the services, partly because when you refer every family to every service, you create wait lists, and a lot of people are referred to services that they weren't going to benefit from anyway because they weren't ready or it wasn't the right service. So we want to give people some solid information about how do you determine what services people actually need so that we're referring them to the right services, and that would help to reduce wait lists, but also just be a better experience for parents and help them be more successful. Again, some practice guidelines are being developed for caseworkers. People I think understand, caseworkers know that they need to check in on how children are doing in school and whether they're getting medical care. Foster parents take excellent care of these needs for children. But sometimes we forget about those other needs. We forget to ask the child, who was important to you before you came into care that you still need to have contact with? Was church important to you and your family? Those kind of questions we don't always ask, and so we want to help our caseworkers have a deeper understanding of what children need, a broader assessment. So we'll be doing some practice guidelines around that. And then one of the other things that is important is to give caseworkers some information about their role in monitoring the use of medication with children in foster care. Whether that's for a health condition or a mental health condition. And we're not asking caseworkers to be medical professionals, certainly, but they should know what medications children are on, and they should be making sure that children are seeing a qualified medical professional that's overseeing the prescription of those medications. So we need to give them some guidance around that. And then the last area is timely permanency. You know, as Leila was providing some of that data, you were looking at the number of children coming in compared to the number of children exiting to permanency. And so we want to work on both sides of that. We want children to not come into care if they don't need to. We also want to look at how do we achieve permanency for them as quickly as possible and safely, and that will reduce our out-of-home care numbers. One of the things that we've seen is that there's a federal law that requires that we either, if a child has been in care for a certain amount of time, that we either proceed to terminate parental rights so the child can be adopted, or that we document a compelling reason why that wouldn't be a good idea for this child. And we need to improve the understanding of that among our staff. We've also seen some delays in court processing of termination of parental rights motions, and I know the courts have been doing a lot of work to increase their capacity, especially in Maricopa County, to look at those timely. And then the other thing that I've mentioned a couple times, this case review process to develop action plans to achieve permanency for children. What we found is just what you were talking about, that people are so overwhelmed that they're just, it's like, I just need to see the children, make sure they're well cared for, I need to go to court, I need to go to CFT meetings, and I don't really have much time to be thinking long-term about what outcome I'm trying to achieve and how to get the children out of care. So what we've done is to start to just look at every single case of every single child in out-of-home care for just 15 or 20 minutes, to just sit down with the worker and say, what's the situation on this case, and then figure out what needs to happen next. So we have a number of categories, and it could be that the workers tell you that these children are safe and everything's good, they thought they needed to wait till the next court hearing before they could ask for the children to go home. And so we can just advise them to say, no, you can file a motion and we could get these children home now. So there's some of those. There's some where the data just wasn't entered. The children are actually home. We need to just enter the data to show that they are home. There are others where we think that the children will be able to reunify. We need to sit down and have a more in-depth discussion about how do we get there, and give the caseworkers some help to get some of those tasks done. Maybe they need some resources in the family. Maybe they need to get another service set up, or there's some report we're waiting for. We can go ahead and help them to do that. There are others where we'll determine that the prognosis of reunification is low and we need to start looking at another option. And so we can set that up so that we can talk with the Attorney General's office about what another permanency option would be. So we're just trying to take a quick look at all of them, determine what needs to happen next. We've seen some success already of caseloads going down where we've been able to do this. And so we're hoping to bring some additional resources in to get through the case, every single child in care, to take a look and see what do we need to do to help these caseworkers out. And then have some resources to also then, hold the TDM meetings if we need to, hold another kind of permanency staffing to figure out what needs to happen next. So I think that probably, I keep saying, like, we're still at a point we just need to roll up our sleeves and help these workers out. And so that's what we're going to do.
So just a quick comment on that. I think that's a wonderful idea, going over those. But just feedback on, I've been asking a lot of questions just to gathering information. So I'm the messenger here, so just, what I'm hearing when they get to court, sometimes the case worker has not prepared the report or not done it well. Or the Attorney General's office is there to represent them, but they haven't been briefed on what's going on either. So what was intended to happen that day doesn't happen because the judge can't move forward because he doesn't have that report. Or he can't move forward because it's not clear that the Attorney General was not able to articulate because they weren't briefed. Or the one who was supposed to be there wasn't, so they sent a replacement and that person didn't know. So we know we have a problem in the courts are full. So that time slot that you get in front of the judge needs to be taken seriously, and we need to get as much done during that time frame as we can. So not having a report filed on time or not filing a report is just, and then it's 6 months before you get in front of the judge again, that child has to go 6 more months. Now, like you said, you could file a motion in between for some things, but not everything. So how do we get maybe there's a check check and balance system in place that before there's a court date, where there's some master list of all the court dates or something, and there's a checklist that says, if somebody goes through and makes a phone call, did you get your report done on time? I mean, they have that with classes today. You get a little note saying, hey, your court report's due. I can't imagine that and maybe there is something like that, I don't know, but I'm just suggesting that knowing the courts are backed up, we can point fingers at the court, or we can make the best use of that time. So just,
That makes great sense. Yes, we should make good use of that time, and I think you're right. And I think it's the same kind of like this circular problem where people are just so overwhelmed, and then they're not making good use of time. So maybe a process issue that we need to look at, but you know, it's also that you know, how do you set up processes just within the office to make things easier for people, but also getting these caseloads down, I think will really help, because it may be that they actually didn't have time to write that court report, you know, because they had so many cases that they had to do other things on that they just literally could not write that report.
That's true.
Yeah.
You have to assume that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So that child then is going to go to court, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
And then they're going to keep that child on their caseload another
Right.
6 months.
Right.
So that they can have time to do that court report, so that they can get that child off their caseload.
Right.
So again, it's feeding itself.
It is.
And
I agree.
if there was somebody who could help them get that court report done,
Right.
that would get that child off their books, then they would have less caseload than they do.
Right, yeah, and I think part of it is, you know, the discussion that we've been having for a while, I think, of really examining what case workers do, and do they need to be doing all that, or are there other people that can do some of that? You know, we've talked about having additional case aides, and I think that would really help. And also, you know, having additional staff at the Attorney General's office to be able to help as well. So I think that there are pieces that are starting to come together that, you know, it's not going to get solved tomorrow, but I do feel optimistic that through these type of things we'll start to see some improvement. And in those offices, like I said, there are offices where caseloads are at a decent level now, and that gives us that opportunity to look at what will a well-run office look like, and really keeping an eye to say, your caseloads are not that high, you can get your court reports done on time, and if you're not, let's talk about what's the barrier, let's work on that.
So just a reminder that says, remember, it's due tomorrow.
Right, yeah, things that just make it easier for you, you know, we're all busy, yeah. Thank you.
Hi, this is Dr. Ryan. Can you all hear me?
Yes, very well.
Sorry about that. I've been trying to kind of find a time to pop in without interrupting anybody. I just have a couple of comments. It seems like going through this whole PIP that everything kind of centers around two things. And those two things are having competent workers and reducing caseload. And I guess my comments on those are, under reducing caseload, I didn't see anything around prevention. And I think that's going to be your key for reducing caseload. I know addressing the backlog is a huge issue as well. But I think, you know, seriously looking at prevention, I was really excited to see the extra $5 million in the budget for prevention. So I'm super curious to hear what you plan on doing with that money in terms of prevention. And then my second comment is just that a lot of the items that you talked about in terms of preparing and training workers who are competent, to me as a social worker, I think, wow, if they just hired social workers, you wouldn't have to do all of that. Because social workers are already trained in pretty much everything that you listed. You know, engaging with families, practice guidelines, you know, and when people feel confident in their work and when they have low caseloads, they tend to stay in their positions, which would help with retention. So I understand it would be impossible to staff, you know, the entire DCS case worker staff with social workers, but I do think that might be a goal. And I think social workers are you know, very related fields. I would recommend that being a goal for the future, to have people who are professionally trained already in how to work with complex issues and families and in social service settings, they would already know, resources and appropriate resources to be, assigning to cases, all the things that you talked about. I feel like, that if you hired folks who already know that stuff, which they are out there, that would really be helpful.
Thank you. As a fellow social worker, I appreciate your comments. I do think, though, that there's, I think that you're right, that there's a certain fit to a job, and people that choose to be social workers may be more likely to have the right fit to work in child welfare. But I also think it's a really complicated job, and, social work school isn't going to prepare you for everything that you need to know in child welfare. So I still think that we would have some work to do around making sure that people have not just a value around family engagement, but the specifics of how you apply that within a child welfare context. So,
definitely, and that's where the Child Welfare Training projects come in handy. And I know, we're at capacity with those, and you're utilizing them as best you can. But I think you would have a lot less training to do. You would still have some training to do, but maybe a lot less.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing I want to mention around prevention, you're right, that prevention is absent from this, and that there's a reason for that. The Child and Family Service reviews and evaluation of our programs for in-home and out-of-home cases. So they don't really look at the quality of our prevention services, and so that the PIP is driven more towards services that we provide after we've determined we needed to open a child welfare case. That doesn't mean that prevention isn't important to us, and I think we have a new prevention administrator who's also very excited to make some decisions about with all of you about how we expand our prevention programs. And then, but I think that there's some aspect of prevention in this, in that if we're doing good assessments, then we're going to be better able to prevent that second report or that third report to the department, and prevent removals and reentries as well. So that, there's the prevention that occurs before a call to the hotline ever gets made. And then there's the prevention of, okay, we've now interacted with that family. How do we prevent any further need for child welfare intervention? And I think that the safety assessment, the work that we want to do around the safety assessment is, I'm not doing it justice in the brief comments that I've made about it, and I think that really holds a lot of promise for us. Because part of it is, really focusing on, engaging with families to understand them well so that we're doing good assessments, really understanding what is actually a safety threat, but also looking at, like I said, really understanding when do you actually need to remove a child versus working with people to control what's happening. A safety threat has two aspects to it. There's a condition going on with the family that's dangerous, and there is a lack of a parent with enough capacity to prevent harm from that circumstance. So if you affect either one of those things, you can keep the child at home, either doing something to prevent that circumstance and kind of keep it at bay while you work on some treatment issues, or substituting somebody else in that family who has a protective capacity until we can build that with the family. And so that's some of the work that we want to do around safety assessment and intervention as well, that I think has a prevention aspect to it of not having to be involved with families again.
Yes, I completely agree, and I love the idea of having some better safety and risk assessment tools out there.
Great. Heather, first, I've seen some of your practice guides, and I love them.
Oh, good.
They're very clear and concise. As I was thinking about that, I was thinking about how people learn, and I'm wondering if you thought about doing like learning groups analysis, where they can talk about the practice guides together as staff, and someone who really well-versed. And that's kind of how you learn, talking with each other about how do you talk with the family, how do you engage in coming up with this practice guide.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I was thinking. And then I've been in a few meetings where we talked about safety and focusing on safety. And I think one of the things that might need to happen is developing some language about safety and how we all talk about safety, all the stakeholders. We all need to be using the same language. So
providers need to be able to talk about safety, and workers need to talk about safety, and judges need to talk about safety. And so kind of developing the same language for everyone to use to talk about
Right.
safety.
Thank you for the comment about the practice guidelines. I'm glad you like them. And I totally agree. So one of the things, we've set up a process of how we develop these practice guidelines, and part of it is to develop that language of, if we're all writing them together, then we'll learn that language together, and we'll have some shared understanding of what practice should look like. And I think that you're right. There's also, the safety model has some language in it, some of which is a little technical. And we can change it. We can get to the same concepts without necessarily having such technical language. I mean, people that design it, there are people that need that technical language, but we can translate it to people so that it makes more sense. So that's some of the work that we want to do, but I definitely agree with you that we need to look for some opportunities. One of the things that's in there, I didn't give you all the detail that's in the PIP, but one of our activities is to provide some educational opportunities with court partners so that we can do exactly what you're saying, that judges and attorneys will have the same understanding that we're applying of what unsafe means, and understanding of, dangerous circumstances and protective capacities, and how both of those relate to create a safety threat or to eliminate a safety threat. And what does it need to look like in order for a child to be able to stay at home? Yeah, we have worries about this family. Yes, we're concerned. There's something, we need to oversee this, but really we need a shared understanding of when does it get to that level that it's just not possible for us to treat this family with the child at home. And those should be, if we're able to get family members to the table and people that care about this child, that child's safety network, we should have far fewer circumstances where we actually need to remove children. It should be, some families, there's no home for the child to live in, or the home is very chaotic, so it's actually dangerous for even professionals to go into the home. Those kind of circumstances, we need to remove children. But many times there are situations that with some creative thinking and building that network, we could keep children at home. So I totally agree. And then the issue around the training, so we've been doing what we're calling quality conversations, which is a webinar that we do, and we just invite staff to come to it. We don't want to tell them they have to right now, but we invite them to join a conversation around these practice guidelines and other topics. But I love your idea, and we have practice improvement specialists, and part of their job is to meet with people in field offices, and so I could suggest that to them, that they use these as a conversation starter. Thank you.
I had a short question, because we've talked about communication from families who are trying to reach their caseworker, and we've talked about sometimes timeliness not happening and children not going back to their homes or moving on to other opportunities for homes. Who communicates with the children? So let's say something doesn't happen at court and the child, it's going to be another 6 months in whatever placement they're in. So who are the people that let the children know at any age level what's happening to them?
I think it would depend. I mean, certainly that's a role of a caseworker, but sometimes the foster parent might be the better person to talk with them about what's actually happening, but the foster parent needs to know what's happening in order for them to be able to do that. So, I mean, I think that it's a team effort, but you're right, it's important. They need to know.
Well, and some of the things that were mentioned here today leave me with concern for the child sometimes being forgotten in all of the adult communication. And so I don't know if that's something that even needs to be referenced somewhere. I just sometimes have seen that in other situations where the child who is the most frightened is the one that sometimes doesn't get those pieces of communication because we're not purposeful about making sure that it happens. So I just wanted to bring that up.
That's really helpful, and that's something that I can definitely, these are the kind of suggestions that have been great when I'm trying to write practice guidelines, to have a group of people helping, because people think of things that I didn't, that we can emphasize in there, so thank you. Are there any other questions? I'd be happy to answer other questions if you're wondering what's going on at the department.
Fairly informative.
Good. All right. Well, thank you, and if anything occurs to you afterwards as you're looking at this, let me know. I think you all have my email address. I was happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. All right, the next agenda item is we need to talk about the committee report that's due on August 15th. So we need to come up with some ideas on how to put together that report. So if we need to have a subcommittee to do that, or any ideas on putting together that report.
It would have to be a review of minutes and maybe pulling together the material things out of that.
Nicole, who's the audience for the report? Is it a requirement of the formation of this committee, or what's the purpose?
What's the question?
What's the purpose?
Of the report?
Yes.
And the audit, and the audit. The audit.
Yeah.
It's required, it is a statutory report.
Yeah, it's publicly posted.
Okay.
So, and if we're an advisory committee, shouldn't it be the advice that we gave to the department? I mean, you know, you just take it down with, well, I mean,
I would guess.
Okay, I think a subcommittee is a good idea. Let's identify a subcommittee and move on.
All right, that sounds like a great plan. Okay, so then we're going to move on to the last item, which is the call for public comment. And I just want to reiterate that you cannot discuss specific case information. No names, other identifying information, no identifying circumstances, and so if you have specific case information, please see Let's Find Out afterwards. So we will allow public comments, but again, we cannot address them and we cannot take action on them. We can just take awareness of them and put them on future agenda items if necessary. And you have 3 minutes each. Yes. Okay, I will try to be as quick as I can. So, my name is Desiree Clemengo. I am a member of Fostering Advocates Arizona Young Adult Leadership Board. All of our members of the board have experienced foster care firsthand. There's about 10 to 12 of us. I personally was in care for 18 years with my 4 siblings and in kinship placement. Fostering Advocates Arizona is a community-wide initiative working to connect young adults in and living foster care to vital networks, resources, and supports. Fostering Advocates Arizona is a part of the National Jenkins Youth Opportunities Initiative and is coordinated in Arizona at the Arizona Children's Excellence. We believe that the voices of youth who have experienced foster care is important to any conversation about the successes and challenges within the child welfare system, its opportunities and threats. Nationwide, the motto is nothing about us without us. We ask for a moment on today's agenda to share with you 5 key priorities along with the recommendations to improve foster care in Arizona. These are presented in our 2016 advocacy document that I have just distributed. The request was denied as the department had other priorities they wanted to share with you. We were disappointed with the decision as we believe you should be creating a space on your agenda and at your table for the voices of children and families served by DCS. Numbers and actions mean little unless you hear voices and know the actual experiences of the kids and families served. We, after all, are the reason why you are here. We do have voices and we want to be heard by you and other groups within the state bureaucracy and in the community. So I will take this time in the public comment period to share quickly the 5 priorities we have. The first one is priority number 1, which is that we need normal life experiences while living in foster care. We appreciate the incorporation in the foster care home licensing rules of provisions to include normalcy and is
sometimes referred to as reasonable and prudent parenting parameters. We know that DCS has incorporated this in the mandated foster parent training, so thank you. We look forward to incorporating similar standards in the Child Welfare Agency licensing rules, including for group homes where far too many teens live, and hope that the department assures that these standards are actually implemented no matter where the child is placed. Secondly, DCS needs to enhance the screening and matching process so we can succeed in stable, supportive foster care placements. With that, we are often placed into families and group care settings for convenience and less on compatibility according to our needs. We need connections with our siblings, staying in our communities, maintaining school enrollment, physical and mental health needs, and honoring our unique ethnic, racial identities, religious preferences, gender expression, and sexual orientation. When this does not occur, we are not at higher risk for disrupting and moving from placement to placement. DCS case specialists should ask us about who we are, what it is that we like to do, and the type of family we want to live with. This should be the driving force behind choosing a placement setting.
Yeah,
I'm at 3 minutes, okay. And the final recommendations you'll see there, specifically what they are and our recommendations for them. So I'd like to thank you for the time for hearing me speak today. And if you guys have any questions, we will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I just wanted to note that you mentioned creating a subcommittee. If you're going to take action, you have to do it in open session, and then any subcommittees will also be subject to open meeting. I just wanted to toss that out there. So can't go create a subcommittee afterward. We need to do it in open session.
Okay.
Members of the Advisory Committee, thank you very much for your time today. I'm Becky Ruffner, and most of you know me. I'm a longtime advocate for kids in Arizona, and I'm here today to ask you to consider including in your recommendations for your report, which is a statutory requirement, that the prevention footprint in the department be expanded, and that we focus our efforts, although we're focusing many efforts on improving the system for children already in foster care. We have an excellent program in Healthy Families Arizona, which is still serving a very small percentage of the population of parents who have very, very young children under the age of 1. As you know, babies come into foster care in Arizona at 3 times the rate of all other ages of children. They are most vulnerable and they are most damaged by not only the trauma of abuse and neglect, but the removal from their parents. And we can prevent this. We know that Healthy Families has an excellent track record and is 96% successful with extremely high-risk parents in preventing maltreatment, abuse, and neglect. It costs $3,500 per family. Families can stay involved for up to 5 years. Most stay involved for several years, but they're better parents when they leave the program. We address depression, domestic violence, substance abuse, as you can see from the data. We have over 20 years of evaluation on this program. It's been accredited by a national board 3 times. We've had accreditation for our statewide system now for 12 years. So I'd like to see the program expanded, and I'd very much like this advisory board to take a position that we need to expand our prevention efforts so that the front door of DCS is less frequented by those most vulnerable to abuse and neglect. There is a lot of information in front of you, but one of the things that I did provide you is a randomized control trial, which is the gold standard in evaluation, and we have that undergirding this program. So thank you very much for your time.
Hi, my name is Melissa Deagle, and I'm representing America for Two Sisters, and I'm also a journalist for the Liberty Beacon Project. And thank you so much for this meeting. It was very informative. I also agree with the fact that we need to have more preventative services, and I really appreciate the fact that the legislators approved a $5 million budget this year for that. As mentioned in this meeting, that they said that they need to roll up the sleeves and really help the case managers and caseworkers. And I really hope that they're going to appoint people that are actually going to do that. That it's not just words, because if you're not in there helping the people, then nothing is going to get done. And as we know from the audit, that people were going in there with preconceived notions, removing children. And that puts more children into the system. And with over 20,000 children in the system, we know that there were children in the system that shouldn't have been put in there. And then my other concern was there's time and care. If the caseworkers are not turning in their reports to the courts, as we just was being discussed in this meeting today, and then 6 months later a court report is being turned in, some of these children had a chance to be returned back home to their families, and that's not okay, because some of these families are sitting in this room today that should have had their children returned. So if truly it's in the best interest of the children, we should be considering that. Let's make sure that it's not just talk today, that we actually get this done, because these children's lives really truly do matter. And the other thing I would really like the legislators and everybody in this room to consider is that there is a federal law for warrants, and that a child should only be removed if there's imminent danger, because it's life or limb. If you're going in and children are being removed sometimes because there's ants in the home, or there's dishes in the sink, or there's a kitten, and these are legitimate reasons. I get hundreds of families that contact me personally, and we need to make sure that we are truly only removing the child if there is imminent danger of life or limb, and that the case managers and caseworkers and their supervisors are being trained on this specifically. So, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Delman McCardle. I was really hoping to have the opportunity to meet Director Gregory McKay today. I was hoping that he'd show up for this meeting. I think he's aware of the warrant issue. I think he's aware that DCS is wreaking harm on children, seizing safe kids without a warrant. DCS would say right now, today, that is their policy. They seize safe children without a warrant, and sometimes without a reason. Not even a given reason at all. So DCS needs warrants, and they need to stop wreaking harm on children. Warrantless removal epidemic against kids needs to be stopped today. I'm very thankful to everybody who came to this room, but we can't let the movement die here because there are kids being seized today, 35 of them without a warrant. So this was a great meeting. I feel like there's a lot of people coming from a very honest place wanting to really have an impact on the system. But these numbers, these graphs, it's hoopla. There's a front door, and we're ripping kids out of that front door, and we're seizing them into a very broken system without any sort of justification. And we need everybody in this room to be a champion for children in ending that today. So thank you all for coming. I really hope we carry this momentum. And I hope Greg McKay hears that warrants are required to seize children. I hope that everybody in this room can help to be a messenger and inspiration to Gregory A. McKay to start getting warrants, because he's putting caseworkers on the hook for a lot of bad removals. It's not fair to the kids, it's not fair to the families, and it's not fair to the community. So thank you all for being champions for change.
My name is Cynthia Elliott. I'm a foster adopted mom. I also am disappointed that Director McKay is not here today. I wanted to talk a minute and ask a question about House Bill 2242. I have been involved in that. I feel okay talking a little bit about my daughter because she's been on TV. She was the little deaf girl that was featured on 12 News because of the situation that she was found in while she was in DCS custody. One of the questions that I have that, or issues that I wondered if there's been any discussion between DCS and the Attorney General's office about considering those cases like ours that fall under Jacob's Law or House Bill 2242, that kids were removed because of lack of treatment, not because of abuse or neglect or anything else. And now with the passage of that law, it's illegal to do that. It would certainly reduce the caseload. And I don't know if there are any numbers of how many of those cases would fall under Jacob's Law that could be taken care of and just dismissed from the system because right now it couldn't happen. Thank you.
My name is Lorraine Patterson, and I've been through the system. And I think it's very discriminatory that we do not have a parent, like other parents here that have been through the system, that can give you direct feedback of what it is like. We've already talked about children being removed when there's absolutely no reason to be removed. And I also work with a lot of homeless women, and I know many, many other parents that will tell you the same thing. But part of the problems are the judges. They are trained to remove kids at the first hearing. Like, I don't want to tell you about my own case, but I have to because I'm sure it's common that there's no reasonable efforts made to keep the child in the home, and that is against federal law, because before you can remove the child, you're supposed to have reasonable efforts. You don't get your charges before you go to court. You're given an attorney, and they either don't show up, they're stamped on the front of the court paper, but they're not there, they know nothing about the case. This is right. And I'm a teacher. I've had my teaching licenses threatened, and other parents too, the same thing. I never had CPS would not meet with me. They wouldn't talk to you. I've never had a case plan made with a parent. Well, they finally made one up. Oh, I was teaching in Gold Canyon, and they have me listed at a meeting. That's the foster care review board. I'm telling you, it's a mess. What I wanted to have, and I've talked to every authority, including Maria Hoffman, the whole crew, Greg McKay, all of them. Well, he had all the evidence and never investigated because they don't investigate. But the parents don't have any information. You literally need a checklist of what is to occur. I had no idea. I'm going to court and I don't even know why I'm there. I go to the courthouse and all I get is a sticky note with a court time. I mean, I've had teachers go with me and they've watched me be yelled at in the courthouse halls by my daughter's guardian ad litem. It's like insane. And I'm obviously still traumatized. My daughter's now has chronic illness. They wouldn't take her learning needs, her physical needs. There's nothing. And the home she was detained in was involved in prostitution.
I'm sorry, but you're at 3 minutes.
Yes, I just want to say, you need people, you need parents that have been through this and can tell you what exactly goes on. And the state, the judges are trained to take the kids at the first hearing. Oh, you're not allowed to present any evidence. The other thing is the unsubstantiated charges, which mine were, are repeated until the end as true. Keeping kids detained, all to fit federal funding requirements. If the kids are not seized at the first hearing, they cannot get funds. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's a mess, and we've stood outside the courthouse. No parents leave that courthouse with their kids. And
thank you.
I can't tell you how upset I am over the whole thing. And had my kid recklessly endangered, as judge after judge turns a blind eye to police records and you know, involving her in a prostitution ring. And I'm telling you, it's all true. Greg McKay had that information, and I'm sorry, you know, I have reason to be upset.
Thank you,
You
but
need
we have to
parents
move
on
on.
that board that know what has gone on and how you lied about in every report in order to detain a child. Well, Michelle, you know, and I'm sorry, I'm still traumatized.
Is there anyone else? You give up.
But
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Linda Dobbs, and I would like to say I would want DCS to be made accountable for destroying families and taking children whom they terrorize and neglect. They have lost their safe home in order to be thrown away like a piece of garbage. This is what happened to my granddaughter who has autism. They took her out of my home on the 22nd of May. They forced me to sign off on paperwork. They told me that if I didn't sign the paperwork, they was going to adopt both my grandchildren out. I'm a grandparent raising two autistic children, 11, they were 11, 10 and 12 at that time. They returned the high-functioning autistic child back to me. They kept the lower-functioning child. They put her in a DDD group home, and then she was transitioned over to a foster home. I took pictures of the abuse and neglect of what my granddaughters went through, and I have pictures of how I've taken care of my grandchildren. I've had guardianship of them since 2012. And I think DCS, I think that, well, first off, they're not their children. She referred to them as our children. They don't belong to them. They belong to us. And the phone call issue, where you make that phone call, they have a 3-day limit before they can return your phone call. And if you call before that 3-day limit is up, it starts over. I've been told that. I've sat at CFTs where DCS caseworkers were supposed to come to a CFT. We had the whole team there. Then they never showed up. We waited for hours. We called our supervisor. We tried to get a hold of her. And they feel that they don't have to tell us that they're not going to show up for a meeting. They can leave us sitting. My autistic granddaughter was taken away from a loving, clean home where she was never neglected. She was never beaten. The only place that she ever knew, this child couldn't even wash her own hair. When they took her on the 22nd of May, I received an unsubstantiated findings report, and 4 days later, I received my first court date, even though it was found unsubstantiated. They took away all her therapies, her speech, OT, she had providers for her HAB, respite and attendant care. They took all that away from her. This child couldn't even take care of herself. And they put her in this DDD transition place until they could find a foster home. They took her away from me. Even after it was found unsubstantiated, they did not return this child to me. They took me to court. They accused my ex-husband of raping my daughter and being the father.
It's 3 minutes. Thank you.
And it shouldn't be confidential. Reporting should not be confidential. Every people that make false allegations, they shouldn't have charges brought up against them, which they say that they will do, but they never did. They remove kids from good homes, like my daughter, and they lie in every report. My reports weren't even signed. They fabricated the case plan, forced to carry I have belt marks on my granddaughter. You need to hear what's going on, and you need to have us parents on board with you to start telling you what is really happening and destroying our lives.
I'm sorry, ma'am, we have to let the next person speak. Thank you.
Hello, I appreciate everybody today. My name is Hank McArdle. I just have 2 quick comments. I think that having somebody that's willing to speak to parents and relatives that just can kind of take a common sense approach. You know, it's tough when you hear a caseworker say, this doesn't make sense, but nobody's willing to actually act on a situation when it's pretty cut and dry, it's pretty black and white, and you hear people on both sides saying the same thing. And I met with a lot of families that I've heard, there's just nobody who will actually take a step and move forward. And the other thing I want to say is that I do think that a warrant to remove a child is important because it gives the chance for a caseworker who's sometimes not trained to have their findings and their report reviewed by a judge, and for the judge to say, yes, that child's in danger. And I think it's important for them to be able to have that reviewed. And I think that's why it's legally required to take a child or to take a person into custody unless there's an emergency situation, to have a judge get a warrant. So I think that's important, and I'd like to make that known today. All right, thank you.
So do you, if you want to form the committee, you guys want to have that discussion?
About the subcommittee?
Yeah, if
Okay.
share.
Because we need to form it today, correct?
Yeah.
I want to reopen that in a minute.
Hi, my name is Maggie Baylor, and I'm here on behalf of myself and just to give a voice to a group of people that I've come to know that really have passion about this subject and making things better at DCS. I know the department is clearly trying to make changes, and I think that you guys touched on some really good points about the disconnect between what the department's trying to do and the parents, and especially the child. That's a great point, that the child needs a voice. I know in my experience that it is difficult to explain to a child exactly what's going on from an adult perspective, when as an adult we don't even really know what's going on. And I think that starts at the very beginning of the process. As an adult, what I'm hearing is confusion. Not knowing about what the removal is, not knowing what to expect from court, not knowing what's going on. And I think that having clear procedures to that, like they're talking about, having a warrant to remove a child. And I don't think that if a child is in imminent danger, I don't understand how an untrained or not efficiently trained social worker, not a social worker, a caseworker, how they're safe going into that environment. Why a police officer or somebody with authority shouldn't be there with them. How are they safe? If the child's unsafe, how is the caseworker safe? I don't know, the more that I'm involved or discovering about the system, the more I seek change, the more I'd like to see something happen. Communication is a huge thing. My caseworkers can't answer a cell phone, and we as parents are expected to jump at anything that they want or need from us is beyond me. An office phone system is archaic. I mean, that's just ridiculous where we're at with our communications nowadays. So I don't know. Definitely, I appreciate everybody coming together today and heard lots of great stuff. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so we need to reopen number 4 and develop our subcommittee while we're here today. So do we have any interest in?
So Denise and I would volunteer to co-chair the subcommittee to look at this, and anyone who'd like to join us is welcome. And really take a look at what needs to be improved.
And I think we have some members that aren't here as well that might want the opportunity. So if the subcommittee is formed here, is there an opportunity then for the others to also volunteer?
Let me ask.
Volunteer. I've been through it, and I can give you some insightfulness and what actually is going on.
I specifically meant the other members of the advisory
I have to
committee.
ask a legal question, and that is, can the other people volunteer?
You need to go into executive session to get both of us.
Go into executive session in order to ask them.
So we should
You're
form
not a
our subcommittee
parent.
now,
Why can't you have a parent?
and then we can go into executive session?
Yeah.
Okay, but we have to form the subcommittee.
We have to make a motion.
Make a motion to have a subcommittee.
And ask the legal advice when everyone's up. Yeah.
I so move that we go into executive session.
No. Yes.
We want to do the committee first?
To make a motion to form a subcommittee.
Right.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Great.
Vote.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And I'll make the motion to go into executive session.
So we just
Somebody needs to second.
I'll second.
We need to vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Motion to form a subcommittee and I make a motion that Emily and Denise are chairs of the subcommittee.
I second.
All in favor?
And I would make another motion then that the other members of our advisory committee who aren't in attendance today would have the opportunity, if they would like to be on the committee, or the rest of us, to let you know.
Please second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
To make a motion, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second. All in favor?
So,